The title of this book is Surrender White People, Our Unconditional Terms for Peace. D.L. Hughley. Hey, D.L. We were talking about you a couple weeks ago. First of all, how are you feeling?
I'm wonderful. You know, I was actually more concerned about my son who contracted it and some of the people that I work with who contracted it. But I really, you know, one of the things was that I was asymptomatic, but, you know, I was dehydrated, and I have a condition where, you know, a thickening of the heart at the bottom. So if I ever am dehydrated, like, I actually, you know, knew that I was going to pass out. I just thought, you know how you get on stage and I feel like that's kind of my...
I can get through it.
Yeah, but I couldn't. And then I thought, well, if I got to go, I might as well be doing something I love. So it was a very interesting... But I tell you what, I learned a lot about myself. I learned a lot about the coronavirus, and I learned a lot about those disparities that they talk about where some people are disproportionately dying. I actually got a chance. I mean, nothing is more sobering than actually being in a COVID unit.
Mr. Hughley, so Black Lives Matter and the names of George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, and Elijah McClain, and so many others have been at the forefront of our recent conversations about inequality in the country. This week, we've been talking about anti-Semitism as well, that was sparked by the Viacom-CBS firing of Nick Cannon for his anti-Semitic comments he made. He has since issued an apology. We just wanted to know your take on what happened.
I think that we learned a lot in that instance, too. I think that we learned it depends on what our goals are. Our goals to make ourselves a more better society, one that can have open dialogue, or is it one to be punitive? I think that what Nick said was problematic, but I think one of the ways you deal with somebody who says problematic things is to make them have to explain what they meant. And sometimes holding things up to the light of day, they crumble under truth. But I think when I was a kid, me and somebody would have a fight, and the teacher would make us apologize, but the reasons we fought were still the same. And I think one of the things that's happened, if you have a bunch of Karens who lose their job, eventually you're going to have a Nick who loses their job. And I think that doesn't make us a better society, and it doesn't take away what they feel. It takes away what they say. So I think we've learned a lot about what not to say, but what not to feel, and not to have dialogue that makes us better and understand each other a little more.
Now, DL, your new book is fantastic. It's called Surrender White People, Our Unconditional Terms for Peace. And in it, you talk about reparations, which is something you know I talk about all the time on this show and outside of the show. And you offer a lot of options as to what can be done. Now, in your view, if we could implement one of those options tomorrow, where would you start?
I think all the descendants of slaves should be able to send their children to higher education, because I think the education gap, you know, obviously we're in the second half of the game, are the people who can best benefit and deserve the chance. And I think that if we provided them quality educations, upgraded their schools, and sent them to places of higher education, be it trade or be it vocational or be it any other kind of school, I think giving our children access to higher education, which is definitely what they need, I think would change things immensely immediately.
Now, also, I'm sure you know this, that leaders in Asheville, North Carolina announced this week on Wednesday that they had voted unanimously to provide reparations in an apology for its role in slavery. What do you think of their plan? Because their plan, my understanding, is not necessarily cash reparations, which is what people always think about, but they have a different type of plan.
Well, here's the thing. We talk about this in the book. I think that anybody who opens these conversations, you know, and obviously they're not nobody's going to get them done right away and to everybody's satisfaction. But reparations have been given. Historically, we gave reparations to people who lost chattel. Slave owners got reparations. Italians got reparations during the administration. Italians were given reparations for 100 years earlier, and the Japanese have gotten reparations. So this idea that we've never paid reparations is a misnomer. But anybody who has a conversation about making something right after all these years, we will keep the mementos of what we did wrong, but not the rectification. Like we build statues to men whose only predicate for getting a statue was being horribly violent to Black people. Like the last time we made a statue or erected a statue of somebody who didn't brutalize Black people was Rocky, and he beat the hell out of Apollo Creed. So,
so you know, you talk about Kanye in the book, And
Yes.
due to his actions, you say he's an honorary white guy now. Okay, that's a strong statement. You couldn't have known that. You couldn't have known that close to press time he would announce his run for president, which we're not sure if he's in or out at this point. What do you say about that? Could you envision a Kanye presidency? Oh my God!
I don't think it's discernibly different than the president we have right now. Literally, I think that when you're motivated, you grew up in Chicago and you're more motivated by Donald Trump than the example of Barack Obama. Whether you agree with him ideologically or not, they're two distinctly men. One is aspirational, one's just an ass. But I'll say this: that they're discernibly, they're the same type of men. They both are amoral. They both are narcissistic. Neither reads, and I've seen both their wives naked. So I think they're exactly the same type.
We all know that white supremacy is a huge issue in this country. But you pinpoint what you say is the real heart of the problem. What is that? Tell us.
I think that the denial of it, it's interesting. We saw this play out this week. Tucker Carlson said that white supremacy wasn't a problem. He connoted that he'd never even met a white supremacist, and then he fired his head writer for being a white supremacist. So this notion there are no impediments, and that we should all be equal, and that these things have never been an impediment to us. Taking part in this grand experiment of America is the first thing. One of the greatest things that they say the greatest thing the devil did was convincing people he didn't exist, and it's also convincing people that white supremacy doesn't exist, because everybody knows it does, and we see it play out all the time.
Right.
You know what, DL? It's always a pleasure to have you here. Your books are spectacular, and this last book, Surrender White People, Our Unconditional Terms for Peace, is fantastic, and everyone who will read it will benefit. Thanks for coming to see us, DL.